Well, good evening and welcome to your town hall. Having reached the hour of 6 o'clock, I hereby call to order the meeting of the Sahuarita Town Council. Remind everybody that's being broadcast live. Tonight we'll begin with our regular meeting, and then after the Pledge of Allegiance, I'll recess our regular meeting, and then we have two Community Facilities District CFD meetings. I don't expect them to go very long, depending on our financial director for the CFDs. And then we'll reconvene our regular meeting. And then at the end, we have an executive session. Usually when we go to executive session, it's for advice from our council. We usually typically have no comments out of that. It's just to provide advice. So when we go to executive session, you're certainly welcome to stay around, but it won't be very exciting and there won't be much afterwards. So feel free to leave after that if you'd like. Tonight's invocation will be given by Chief Chuck Wonder of the Green Valley Fire District. And the pledge will be led by Rebecca Bond, Ryan Bond, and Melissa Agurulu from Adventures with Friends. This time, Chief?
There we go. Thank you. Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight grateful for the many blessings you have provided us and for this opportunity here tonight to serve others for the betterment of this town. We pray for your guidance, your wisdom, and your discernment for these council members as they do the work you have placed before them. And we pray that the decisions made by this council will bless this community and honor you. Lord, as always, I ask special prayers for our first responders who to go to work daily, prepared and ready for whatever comes their way. Please fill them with courage, humility, and your peace as they face the various challenges they will inevitably encounter. I specifically pray for our wildland firefighters around the country as our season is off to an active start. Place a hedge of protection over them, keeping them healthy and safe, and be with their families as they await their return. We pray these things in your Son's most precious name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
If my friends from Adventures with Friends come up to the podium and lead us in the pledge. Anywhere you want. You don't have to be on the microphone. Whenever you're ready, you just start us off and we'll join in.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thanks for being here and participating. Appreciate it. And at this time, I'd also like to welcome our Boy Scout troop in the back, who we've been giving an education to and talking about the role of town government. Thanks for being here. I hope you learned something from it. And I know in the future we'll be doing a tour and they'll be looking at the police department and the court justice system as well. So at this time, I'll suspend our town council meeting and commence with our Rancho Sahuarita Communities Facilities District meeting. I hereby call that meeting to order of the Rancho Sahuarita CFD. And Madam Clerk, may I have a roll?
Board Member Bondo. Absent. Board Member Davis.
Here.
Board Member Morales.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Egbert.
Here.
Chairperson Murphy.
Here.
Quorum present.
Thank you. Next is item number 3, which is called to the public. At this time, any member of the public is invited to address the district board on any issue which is on tonight's agenda or any issue which the district board can lawfully act upon at a future meeting. Pursuant to Arizona open meeting laws, the district board may not discuss the items, but individual members of the district board may respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the district board, may ask staff to review the matter, or may ask the matter to be placed on a future agenda. I have one call to the public, but that's for our regular meeting, not for this CFD. I don't have any speaker cards for the Rancho Sahuarita CFD. Would anybody like to comment on that? Seeing no movement, I will declare the call to public closed and move to item number 4. Madam Secretary.
Item 4 is the consent agenda.
Thank you. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve the consent.
A second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Item number 5, Madam Clerk.
Discussion and possible adoption of resolution number 2022-0023 of the District Board of the Rancho Saharita Community Facilities District, a community facilities district of Arizona, approving a tentative budget for fiscal year 2023 in the amount of $20,629,470 pursuant to section 48-716 of the Arizona Revised Statutes as amended, setting a public hearing date on said tentative budget, filing statements and estimates of the operation and maintenance expenses of the Rancho Saharita Community Facilities District, the costs of the capital improvements to be financed by the approved ad valorem tax levy, and the amount of all other expenditures for public infrastructure and enhanced municipal services proposed to be paid from the tax levy and of the amount to be raised to pay general obligation bonds of the Rancho Saharita Community Facilities District, all of which shall be provided for by the levy and collection of an ad valorem tax. This on the assessed value of all the real and personal property in the Rancho Saharita Community Facilities District, providing for notice of the filing of the statements and estimates and notice of a public hearing on the portions of the statements and estimates not relating to debt service on general obligation bonds, and providing that this resolution shall be effective after its passage and approval according to law.
Thank you, Mr. Mariotti. Our district treasurer will present this item, and it's a 50-50 wager whether his presentation will be as long as our agenda item on there, so we'll see.
I think the agenda pretty much sums everything up.
It does.
We hope anyways, right? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Tonight you'll have an opportunity to adopt the tentative budget for fiscal year 2023. As you know, the tentative budget sets the budget ceiling for the year ahead. So the final budget, which we'll bring back to you in 2 weeks, can be different than the amount that you have tonight. You know, it could be lower. We could shift things around, but it can't be higher than the amount that you established tonight. So with that, we'll jump right in and give you a little bit of background on the district. It was formed in March of 2014. It encompasses 943 acres, and all of that is within the town of Sahuarita limits. At build-out, it's planned to have 3,267 residential units in it, as well as 1.25 million square feet of commercial space. Each year in January, we receive information from the county assessor's office on the properties and the property values of all the property within the district boundaries. This information is dated. Even when we get it in January, it's not up to date. It includes everything that's about 6 months in the past from that point in time, because it does take a little bit of time from when new construction activity occurs to that new construction activity being accounted for in the assessor's tax rolls. Those tax rolls, however, do provide the basis of property values and as well as taxation values that we'll use for the year ahead. So those tax rolls indicate that there are 323 residential units in the district as of that point in time, and that number represents a 10% build-out figure. 161 properties, there's 161 rental properties within the 323 residences that are listed there, and there are 161 more than last fiscal year. That's a 99% increase. That is not a typo, by the way. It actually is 161 twice. This slide provides some historical information on the net assessed property values within the district. You can see that the last several years that trajectory has increased, and just looking around, you can see the reason for that. There's been a lot of development that's occurred over the last several years, and the property values bear that out. The latest property valuation totals $12.14 million, total net taxable assessed valuation. This is an increase of $5.19 million, or a 75% increase. Commercial lots account for about 1/4 of the total property valuations, totaling $2.95 million. So the district, pursuant to state statutes, is a tax levying public improvement district whose purpose is to finance the acquisition and maintenance of public infrastructure and facilities. When the district was formed, there was also a successful bond election that provided $60 million in bonding authority. And that election also authorized the district to levy a tax which would be used to pay back those bonds over time. Of the $60 million authorized, there remains $31.9 million of bonding capacity that's available for future debt issuances. So we've had 3 general obligation bonds issued going back to 2018, and the 2018 bonds were refunded just recently, an action that the board took within the past month. The 3 outstanding general obligation bonds that were issued have outstanding debt at the end of this fiscal year that would total $28.1 million of principal. And those bonds will be termed anywhere between 2043 through 2047. So even though the district is legally separate from the town, because the district board, let me rephrase it, because the town council sits as the district board members, and because town staff function as district employees, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board basically says that we're so interrelated with the town that it gets pulled into the town's financial reporting entity. So the town accounts for the district activity in a special revenue fund, and it's classified as a blended component unit of the town. The district does not issue separate financial reports. So if you want to see the district financial activity in audited reports, you have to look at the town's financial reports. You have to look at the town's budget. With that, the budget for fiscal year 2023 amounts to $20,629,470. The budget is balanced in that our financing sources are equivalent to our financing uses. So basically the pie chart on the left is equal to the pie chart on the right. This number is higher than the current year budget by $173,000, which represents a less than 1% increase over the current year budget. This slide provides the composition of the district's revenues and sources, and you can see the vast majority, or 91% of the total sources, are from beginning fund balances. And that really is a representation of our unspent bond proceeds from our previous issuances that are rolling forward to fiscal year 2023. The district does levy a property tax, and those property taxes should bring in about $591,000, or 3% of the total funding sources. There are 2 components to that tax. One is to repay the bonds we talked about earlier, and the other, a smaller component, is for operations and maintenance costs. The combined tax rate is $4.99 per $100 of net taxable assessed valuation of all property within the district. This number has not changed since the initial bonds were issued in 2018. So that's the same amount as the current fiscal year. Debt service component represents $4.69 of the $4.99 that you see here, and the operations and maintenance component is 30 cents. Developer contributions total $1.21 million, approximately 6% of the total financing sources. And if you recall that when district issued bonds, the developer agreed to pay the difference between what the district collects in property taxes and what the annual debt service obligations are for the year. So currently, there's not enough property valuation to generate enough property taxes to pay our debt service obligations. As such, the developer has to contribute, well, we're estimating $1.2 million next fiscal year to sort of subsidize that payment. The unspent bond proceeds do earn a little bit of interest while they sit in trust, and we've programmed $250 for that. Looking at the composition of district expenditures and uses, the largest component is $4.38 million, or 21% of the total budget, for capital outlay. That capital outlay includes the acquisition of roadways and sewer lines within the district boundaries, and that acquisition will be made with the district's master developer. And all of that will be financed from previously issued general obligation bonds. Debt service totals $1.77 million, or 9% of the total budget. That will include bond principal payments, bond interest payments, as well as some banking fees. Operational costs total $30,000, and that will account for general administration costs of the district, as well as to pay for district engineering costs, and we outsource that to a firm, as well as street and maintenance costs. Ending fund balances total of $14.45 million, and that really is a representation of bond proceeds that will not be spent by the end of the fiscal year and will carry forward to fiscal year 2024 for future infrastructure acquisition. So with that, the resolution before you would adopt the fiscal year 2023 tentative budget, at which point the budget would be filed and made available with the district clerk as well as on our website. The resolution also establishes a public hearing and notice for final budget adoption, which is slated for the June 13, 2022 board meeting, which is in 2 weeks. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Very thorough as always. Appreciate that, AC. I don't have any questions. Do my colleagues have any questions? No. If not, I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt resolution number 2022-023.
Second. Any further questions, discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Having no more further business for the Rancho Cerrita Community Facilities District, we're adjourned, and now I'll commence with our Quail Creek Community Facilities District meeting. I hereby call this meeting of the Quail Creek Facilities District to order. Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call?
Board Member Bracco, absent. Board Member Davis.
Here.
Board Member Morales.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Egbert.
Here.
Chairperson Murphy.
Here.
Quorum present.
Thanks. Item number 3 is called to the public. At any time, any member of the public is invited to address the district board on any issue which is on tonight's agenda or any issue which the district board can lawfully act upon at a future meeting. Pursuant to Arizona open meeting laws, the district board may not discuss the items, but individual members of the district board may respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the district board, may ask staff to review the matter, or may ask the matter be placed on a future agenda. I don't have any speaker cards for the Quail Creek Community Facilities District. Would anybody like to address this item? Seeing no movement, I declare the call to public closed and move to item number 4, which is the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. We come to item number 5. Madam Clerk?
Discussion and possible adoption of Resolution Number 43 of the District Board of the Quail Creek Community Facilities District, a Community Facilities District of Arizona, approving a tentative budget for fiscal year 2023 in the amount of $1,052,470 pursuant to Section 48-716 of the Arizona Revised Statutes as amended, setting a public hearing date on said tentative budget, filing statements and estimates of the operation and maintenance expenses of the Quail Creek Community Facilities District, the costs of the capital improvements to be financed by the approved ad valorem tax levy, and the amount of all other expenditures for public infrastructure and enhanced municipal services proposed to be paid from the tax levy, and of the amount to be raised to pay general obligation bonds of the Quail Creek Community Facilities District, all of which shall be provided for by the levy and collection of ad valorem taxes on the assessed value of all the real and personal property in the Quail Creek Community Facilities District, providing the notice of filing the statements and estimates and notices of a public hearing on the portions of the statements and estimates not relating to debt service on general obligation bonds, and providing that this resolution shall be effective after its passage and approval according to law.
Thank you. And Mr. Mariotti, the district treasurer for this CFD, is making a return visit. Mr. Mariotti.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So again, this agenda item will provide you an opportunity to adopt the tentative budget for fiscal year 2023. And fiscal year 2023 commences in a little bit more than a month on July 1. The tentative budget sets the budget ceiling for the, a year ahead, and the final budget can be no more than what's adopted tonight. A little bit of background on this district. It was formed in September of 2005. It encompasses 1,192 acres, all within the Sahuarita town limits. The district represents actually a little bit more than half of the total Quail Creek specific plan area, which is 2,113 acres in total. At build-out, the district is expected to have 2,600 residential units in it. Each year in January, we receive information from the county assessor's office. The tax rolls indicate that there are 1,126 residential lots, which represents 43% of our build-out figure of 2,600. This is 133 more than the current fiscal year. which is a 13% increase. And of the total 1,126, 194 are classified as rental properties. This gives you a little bit of historical background on the net assessed property values of the property within the district. And as you can see here as well, the slope increases quite a bit in the last several years as there's been a lot of development out in the Quail Creek specific plan area. The latest valuation of all property amounts to $35.27 million in total net taxable assessed valuation. This is a $4.45 million increase, or 15% increase over last year. The district, pursuant to state statutes, is a tax-levying public improvement district whose purpose is to finance the acquisition and maintenance of public infrastructure and facilities. When the district was formed, there was a bond election that authorized a $30 million bonding capacity. It also authorized the district to levy a property tax that would be used to pay back any bonds that were issued. There's been one issuance going back as far as 2006 in the amount of $12.66 million. Those bonds will be paid off in fiscal year 2030. And of the total issued, $6.64 million remains outstanding by the end of this fiscal year. Although the district is legally separate from the town because the town council members sit as district board members, as town staff act as district staff, it's so intertwined with the town that the Governmental Accounting Standards Board says it needs to be pulled into the town's financial reports. And it's accounted for as a blended component unit within a special revenue fund of the town. And it also does not issue its own separate financial reports. The budget for fiscal year 2023 amounts to $1,052,470. Our financing sources equal our financing uses, which gives us a balanced budget. This amount is higher than the current year budget by $12,000, which is just a 1% increase over the current fiscal year. This slide provides a composition of the district's revenues, and the district levies a property tax which provides just about all of the funding sources for the year. There are two components to that property tax, a debt service component, which is used to repay the bonds, and a component for operations and maintenance. The combined tax rate is $3.03 per $100 of net taxable assessed valuation, and this rate is lower than the current tax rate by 27 cents, going from $3.30 down to $3.03. The debt service component is the amount that's going down. So it was $3 in the current fiscal year. That's projected to be $2.73 per $100 of net taxable assessed valuation. Operations makes up 30 cents of the total $3.03 that you see there. The debt service property tax will generate $947,000, which is 90% of our financing sources. The property taxes for operations and maintenance will generate $105,000, which is 10% of the total. And then you see a small amount, $100, which is really investment income for any property taxes that we collect that sit in trust until we have to make our debt payments. Looking at how the district will use its funding, you can see that 90% goes for debt service. That would be to pay debt principal and interest payments, as well as some banking fees are included in that $952,000. And then operations makes up $100,000, and that will be used to pay for general administration costs of the district, roadway and right-of-way maintenance, as well as a portion of the cost for Quail Creek Veterans Municipal Park. You'll notice that there are no ending fund balances as it consumes all of the resources during the year. And I should also point out, for the first time, this fiscal year doesn't include developer contributions because the property tax collections are sufficient to pay the general obligation bond debt service payments. So with that, the resolution before you would adopt the fiscal year 2023 tentative budget, at which point it'll be filed and made available with the district clerk and also made available on the website. It establishes a public hearing and notice for final budget adoption for our next board meeting on June 13th. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Very thorough again. I don't have any questions. Any questions from my colleagues? I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
adopt resolution number 43.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Having no more further business for the Quail Creek Facilities District, we'll adjourn that meeting and now return to our regular council meeting. Madam Clerk, may I have a roll?
Councilmember Bracco, absent. Councilmember Davis. Councilmember Morales. Vice Mayor Egbert.
Here.
Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Quorum present.
Thanks. I'll begin this portion of the meeting presenting a proclamation declaring the month of May 2022 as Building Safety Month to Anna Cassidy, our Planning and Building Director, and if she'll join me at the podium. It's a team effort, right? And I'll be presenting this proclamation. Whereas the town of Sahuarita, Arizona is committed to recognizing our growth and strength depends on the safety and essential role of our homes, buildings, and infrastructure play both in everyday life and when disasters strike. And whereas our confidence in the buildings that make up our community is achieved through modern building codes and the devotion of building safety and fire prevention officials, plans examiners, inspectors, permit technicians, architects, engineers, tradespeople, and others in the construction industry who work to ensure the safe construction of buildings. And whereas Building Safety Month is sponsored by the International Code Council to remind the public about the critical role of our community's largely unknown protectors of public safety. I think that's how you like it, right? Our building safety staff and fire prevention partners who assure us of safe, resilient buildings that are essential to our prosperity. And whereas each year in observance of Building Safety Month, people all over the world are asked to consider the commitment to improve building safety, resilience, and economic investment at home and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential service provided to all of us by local and state building departments and fire prevention agencies in protecting lives and properties. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Tom Murphy, the mayor of the town of Sahuarita, on behalf of the town council, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2022 as Building Safety Month, in testimony whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the seal of the town of Sahuarita on this 23rd day of May 2022. Congratulations, and thank you for all that you do. I think we're probably having a picture. And then, would you like to say a few words while I make my way back up? Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy, for recognizing the importance of building safety in our community. I have with me 2 new additions to our building safety team. To my right is Nick Blaine, the Chief Building Inspector. He's been with us for 4 weeks now, I think. And to his right, Bill Lahr, our new building official, who's been with us for 2 weeks today. I'll turn the mic over to Bill to give himself an opportunity to introduce himself, and thank you all very much.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Council. Greatly appreciate the opportunity that has been given me to be of service to the town and for me to be able to bring over 23 years of experience in the building codes, backgrounds, and to be able to be of service for the town of Sahuarita.
Thank you. And you know, we like things easy and fast and as efficient as possible, right?
There is no other way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for all that you do and being here tonight. Item number 6 is approval of the agenda as it was revised. I'll entertain a motion at this time. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Our agenda is approved this evening. Item number 7 is called to the public. One more time. At this time, any member of the public is invited to address the town council on any issue which is on tonight's consent agenda or any issue which the town council can lawfully act upon at a future meeting. Pursuant to Arizona open meeting laws, the council may not discuss the items, but individual members of the council may respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the council, may ask staff to review the matter, and may ask the matter to be placed on a future agenda. I have one speaker card that I'm very excited about this evening. Gabriel Oro Pisa? Okay, I did my best. Had a pause. Well, you come up here and introduce yourself, but he's connected with our new EGs that's coming into our town.
Yeah, I have no issues. Well, maybe your diet, so.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you.
No, yeah, my name is Gabriel Oropesa. I'm the Senior Engagement Manager for EGs. I just wanted to get up here and say how excited we are to join the community. It really is about time, you know. I'm the person that sees all your comments and DMs like, when you're gonna open already, my stomach can't take it. Yep, we see that. So we're gonna make a formal announcement pretty soon here, but by the end of the summer, we should all be having EGs here. So it's gonna be fun. We're planning a one of a kind grand opening, and it's gonna be an awesome time, and we're so excited to be joining you guys. So.
You're not going to put me in the dunk tank of EGs or anything like that, are you?
Oh, we have some fun plans.
Okay. Well, I'm all in if you're willing.
Yeah. And I brought some stickers and some EGs for everyone, too. So, yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And welcome to our community. I know it'll be a great partnership, and thanks for answering some of the questions.
Yeah.
Because we get asked them all the time.
Yeah. Like, by the end of the summer. So, like I said, we'll be announcing an opening date pretty soon here. And it's coming.
Thank you. We appreciate it. I have no more speaker cards. Would anybody else like to address the council at this time? Seeing no movement, I will declare the call to public closed and come to council brief summary of current events. Well, let me go before I forget. Vice Mayor, do you have any comments?
Just very quickly, I wanted to first apologize for not being there in person. I last minute heard of a training that was required for me to be at. So I apologize for not being there. I'm seeing you guys on YouTube video on our town site, and it looks very lonely up there with just three of you.
Yes, it is. I think we're more separated than we were during the pandemic. So
I will definitely be there. Obviously, the next one, this is just out-of-state one, just briefly. Before I left, obviously, I went to the chamber dinner. I know that Councilmember Morales and the mayor and I were all there and enjoyed a wonderful dinner supporting our local chamber. And I also was invited to go visit La Posada Adult Day Care Services that they have there, and wanted to just let others know that in the community that resource that's available. It's a nonprofit organization there with La Posada that allows caregivers to allow their loved ones to come and enjoy the day away having fun, and the caregivers having a day to recuperate. So I wanted to make that announcement that services in our community. And the last thing I think would be just a great congratulations to all the graduates of 2022 and the police officers that did an incredible job with traffic.
thank you. Councilmember Morales? Mr. Davis?
No, I just want to commend Mr. Dilly and his staff on that budget presentation. Was it 10 days ago? I thought it was very thorough and actually dived into a lot of details that I think will be valuable moving forward. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Mine will be repetitive and brief because I go last, so everybody stole my thunder. I as well appreciated the budget retreat. It was very thorough, very inclusive, very open, transparent. I was just really appreciative of all the staff and all the work that went into that. I know those things don't happen by accident. Also was able to attend both of the high school graduations, and again, a shout out to our police department. I think they went very well. They come with some traffic challenges when we have mostly our whole town each night. One was Wednesday, one was Thursday, when you have everybody attending graduation like that, so I appreciate it. And then myself and Mr. Dilly attended the influential youth celebration for the I-19 corridor that the Green Valley News, Sahuarita Sun, and the Nogales International puts on, including all our youth, much like the Boy Scouts that are in the audience tonight, all the wonderful things from kindergartners all the way up to, I think, high school seniors, on all the contributions that they provide for our community. And I had to lean over to Mr. Dilly and say, I don't think probably either one of us are worthy enough when you hear all the great accomplishments at our youth, and I know that doesn't always make the news in the paper. So I appreciate them holding that, and as well as the great chamber dinner that we attended as well. That's all I had. Just as a reminder, as you saw on the screen when we were talking about the budget, June 13th is our next council meeting, and that's when we'll be tentatively adopting the budget. And then June 27th, when we'll hold the public hearing and hopefully adopting the final budget. And we come to item number 9, Madam Clerk. Unless you want me just to go right to Mr. Dilly.
Town Manager's Report highlighting employee and department accomplishments, capital improvement projects, development projects, and town events.
Well, I'm glad I punted to you because I didn't have all that ready, so thank you. Mr. Dilly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It's an honor for me to take a few minutes of your time tonight to just do a quick highlight and a brief overview of the Town Manager's Report for the month of May. Can we cue that presentation up? Thank you. As is our practice, my report starts out by shining a spotlight on employees who have experienced work anniversaries during the month of May. The brackets represented in the report are 1 to 4 years, 5 to 9 years, 10 to 14 years, and 15 years plus. In the first bracket of 1 to 4 years, we recognize tonight Vanessa Tenna in Public Works and Dina Troutwine in Courts. In the 5 to 9 year bracket, we recognize Officer Peterson in the Police Department. In the 10 to 14 year bracket, we recognize Julie Rosales, Record Supervisor in the Police Department. And in our last bracket, that's the 15 plus year, we only had one employee that reached that milestone this month, celebrating his 19th year with the town of Sahuarita. Tonight we recognize Detective Sergeant Carlos Navarrete. We extend, as we have in other updates, we extend an invitation to employees that reach this milestone to the actual meeting, either in person or virtually, so that we can put a spotlight even brighter on these individuals, and we can thank them personally. Detective Sergeant Navarrete is here with us tonight, and we want to take a moment to thank him for his many years of service to the town. But before we do, let me just take a minute to share with you some background about Carlos. Carlos was employed with the Sahuarita Police Department in May of 2003 after he was released from active duty service with the U.S. Air Force. Mayor, I thought you'd appreciate that.
I do. One of them got it right. Thank you.
Prior to his employment with the town, he worked as a reserve deputy with the Graham County Sheriff's Department. He's held multiple positions with our agency, including patrol, field training officer, and K-9. He was also assigned as a gang detective with the state's gang task force and further worked as an undercover operative with the Counter Narcotics Alliance. Detective Navarrete was promoted to the position of patrol sergeant in June of 2014 and was reassigned to the Investigations Bureau in August of 2018. Detective Sergeant Navarrete grew up in Safford, Arizona. He's married and is a proud father of 4 children. That was my cue to advance the slide. He enjoys coaching youth football and is a diehard Colts fan. Now, this is no judgment there.
Right.
This is his night to shine, so
That's
we're all
right.
Colts fans tonight.
They're one of the best college teams I've ever watched. So
Besides his family, his favorite hobby is riding his Harley Davidson motorcycle. When he was asked about his favorite quote, he said it doesn't matter where you come from, it just matters what you're made of. Please join me tonight in thanking Detective Sergeant Navarrete for his 19 years of dedicated service to this organization, to our community. Thank you. Thank you very much, Carlos. Appreciate you. Now to just spotlight a few employees for above and beyond type achievements. First, we have our technology manager, Ronald Bishop, who I know is here as well. Thank you, Ronald. He just recently graduated from the CompTIA Public Technology Institute's Certified Government Chief Information Officers Program. This program is in partnership with Rutgers University Center for Government Services. Ron is recognized among a growing number of technology executives seeking to improve their technology leadership skills. The program is designed to address the most critical issues facing IT executives in the public sector. So he just recently graduated from that. We're also spotlighting our planning and building director, who we just had at the podium, Mayor and Council, Anna Cassidy. She was recently admitted into the International City Managers Association's High Performance Leadership Academy. I have not had the pleasure of going through that program, but I've had colleagues that have, and really wanted to spotlight Anna for her initiative in getting into this program. The Academy is an interactive 12-week online program that was created specifically to enhance government professionals' leadership skills in areas such as organizational development, collaboration, effective communication, and change management. So we wanted to recognize both Ron and Anna as shining examples of employees committed to continuing their professional development in our organization. So thanks a lot, Ron and Anna. Mayor and Council, the next section of the manager's report really dives into major highlights from various departments. Our police department has certainly been very busy this month in their efforts to move forward community policing. Activities from providing roadside assistance, there's a great story in there. The beneficiaries of that assistance referred to the officers that help them as angels. Continuing efforts to advance the department towards statewide accreditation through the Arizona Law Enforcement Accreditation Program. And finally, hosting a very successful National Drug Take Back Event Week. This event was in partnership with DEA, and altogether the department was able to collect over 58 pounds of expired unused medications in the community. So a lot of neat events and activity in our police department. In economic development, the Sullivan Source, a town of Sarita economic development biz launch sponsored tech company, was a featured panelist at a recent AAED spring conference. The Sullivan Source, a renewable energy tech company, presented to conference attendees on innovations in water and sustainability. The town of Sarita was featured by Sullivan Source as an example of a jurisdiction supporting tech startup activities in the region. ED also participated, our economic development staff also participated with in a meeting with Pima Community College and the Sarita Food Bank and Community Resource Center, and this was in an effort to promote future workforce development programming in our community. Also, we had Parks and Recreation, the new public art introduced in the community earlier in May, the partnership with Southern Arizona Arts and Culture Alliance produced a new sculpture that adds artistic beauty to the town's lake, park, and rancho. If you haven't been by to see that, it's really neat. Also, we see evidence of the new National Fitness Court coming away at the Animax Park. We have the pad that was laid, and it's curing right now, getting ready for installation of the new stations. Very exciting to see that. And finally, in this area, we've got some more spotlights. The Parks and Rec group also shared with us in the report that the Twin Buttes Park continues to develop their master trails plan. In the town manager's report, there's details regarding upcoming meetings, public meetings with our Parks and Rec Commission, as well as later this summer with the town council and in finalizing that master plan for the park. Emily was recently featured on the cover of Search and Rescue magazine, and that's in the manager's report as well. Other great information on work our Parks and Rec team is doing for the community is also captured in the report. Lastly, I wanted to call attention to how wonderful the town hall is looking lately, or most recently, with the new fresh paint that's being applied to both our internal walls and to the external walls. Previously, everything internally was painted with a single yellowish tone paint, and because of that, many of the neat architectural features of the building were hidden out of sight. You look around, even in this room, you'll see by using multicolored tones, you'll see the architectural features about. Those are very evident out in the lobby area. As you look up, you'll see neat architectural features that previously were hidden. Really wanted to send gratitude to our facilities group for spearheading that. Makes it all the difference in these buildings. We've got a couple of capital projects that are spotlighted in the report as well, Mayor and Council. Actually, before doing that, I wanted to recognize that in the town manager's report this month, we also have several updates on many active commercial developments as well as land use developments. So please go there for those updates. You saw, thank you, Bill, for introducing yourself to the council and to the community. Our new building official is also highlighted in the report. Now to the capital improvement projects. Two are specifically called out in the report. One is the Sundial Reconstruction just out here in the municipal complex. You'll note that there's something missing from that picture of the sundial. There are no flowers in that bed surrounding the fountain. If you go out there today, you'll see that it's completely void of any dirt, and that's because it's being prepped for concrete work to be done there. And so that project's moving forward. Additionally, we've got the Crail crossing extension work, phase 2, which is the bridge. And if you take a look in the report, you'll see some photos there. There's also a link in the capital project section that will take you to even more pictures online and some neat drone shots, some aerials that are really, really quite fascinating to look at. And finally, this is kind of a new add to the town manager's report. On a quarterly basis, we'll have the strategic plan update inserted into the manager's report for the council and the public to benefit from. The strategic plan quarterly report is also available online. This quarterly report provides an overview of the town of Sahuarita's strategic initiatives and performance measures for the third quarter of this fiscal year. Those areas of focus are economic expansion and placemaking, outreach and communication, infrastructure, community well-being, and high-performing organization or governance. These also play a role in our budget that we present to council and how we weigh ourselves in producing for the community. I won't go into any detail on this, Mr. Mayor and Council, but the report is really only a couple pages long, but those pages are packed with great information regarding the work of staff and the council in furthering the goals and focus areas of the strategic plan over the reporting quarter. At this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council has.
No, thanks. This is an addition since Mr. Dilly arrived, and I personally appreciate it. Recognition of our employees and updates on the things that are happening within the town that we get to share with our residents. But on behalf of the police department, we've had a lot of posts. We have a lot of police angels helping change tires and those things, but they did want me to say, don't cancel AAA or Good Sam. That's not their full-time job now. But I know it's great under the umbrella of community policing, and please thank our officers for that. But I know they are not learning a new trade as we go out there. Any questions? Any comments? No? Thanks, Mr. Dilly.
Mayor and Council, thank you. This was just an overview. There's a lot more information in the report itself, and it's available online as well.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Item number 10 is our consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion at this time. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Madam Clerk, item number 11.
Discussion and possible appointment to the Board of Adjustment.
Thank you. And this nomination to the Board of Adjustment will be made by the Vice Mayor, who's on the phone. Vice Mayor Egbert, would you like to introduce and make a motion?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to introduce the council and to those in attendance, my nominee for the Board of Adjustments is Alexi Savoy. I had the great opportunity to volunteer and serve with her for several years in different capacities and different projects, and I valued her logic and her counsel and her thought processes and problem solving. I found out that she has a degree in physics, that she has also worked for a construction company and helped with the development of a small subdivision. She's familiar with building codes and zoning laws, and of all of those great qualifications so far, I was probably significantly impressed with the fact that in a time when the schools were desperate for substitute teachers during the COVID last year, Lexi took the time to get her certification first to be a sub and for the school district, and stepped up and served in those schools in a huge capacity. So she definitely has the heart of service and volunteer and assisting the community. So with that, I move to appoint Alexis Savoy to the Board of Adjustments to fill an unexpired term ending June 30th, 2022, and to appoint her to serve another 4-year term ending June 30th, 2026.
Entertain a second. Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
And do you know if she is here this evening?
I don't know. I know I invited her, but you can ask if she's in the room.
Are you in the room? No? Oh. Oh, really? Okay. Well, if she comes back in, point her out and we'll recognize her at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate it. Madam Clerk, item number 12.
Arizona Center for Nature Conservation Phoenix Zoo presentation.
Thank you, and I'm very excited to hear this presentation. Beth Abramovitz, our Public Works Director, Town Engineer, I know she's here as well. But we have Bert Castro, President and CEO, Bonnie Mendoza, Chief Operating Officer, Chief Financial Officer, Lorraine Frias, Senior Vice President, Institutional Advancement, and Joe Wilkies, Senior Vice President of Facilities Operations. I'm not sure if all of you are here. I know there's a good crowd here tonight, and we'll be getting, I think, a very interesting presentation. I heard about this a few years ago, and then it kind of went silent, so I was very excited to see this on our agenda. I know the pandemic probably had a little bit to do with the slowdown of it, but thank you for being here this evening.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Swadita Town Council, for allowing us to be here today. We're really excited to be here today. Good evening, everybody. We came down from Phoenix, just about an hour and 45 minutes away, the way I drive. I'm sorry, is Sergeant Narita here? I ride a Harley. I love riding Harleys.
But not speeding in our town.
But not speeding in your
Okay.
town.
I was wondering if that's why you're looking for our officer.
Well, thanks for having us here tonight. I think what I'd like to do is start off by going over our mission statement. And as the mayor mentioned, I'm the president and CEO of the Arizona Center for Nature Conservation, which is the governing body of the Phoenix Zoo. So with that, I'll just read that. The Arizona Center for Nature Conservation advances the the stewardship and conservation of animals and their habitats while providing experiences that inspire people and motivate people to care about the natural world. So everything we do really revolves around our mission. And we're in the business of really saving wildlife species around the world, as well as species here in Arizona. This November will be our 60th anniversary here at the zoo. The Phoenix Zoo is accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. So to give you some context, there are about 2,500 animal exhibitors in the U.S. Right now, and there are only about 240 accredited members. It's a very rigorous process that we go through. They look at everything from your science education, your animal health and welfare issues at your facility, along with your finances, safety. It's a very, very rigorous process. And we're experts when it comes to wildlife. We've really, the last 10 years have been revitalization of the zoo, and we've built state-of-the-art facilities, immersive animal habitats. We offer amazing science-based educational opportunities, and we're one of the most active and largest conservation organizations in Arizona. So to give you some basic information, we're located in beautiful Papago Park in Phoenix. We sit on about 125 acres. We're the most visited cultural institution in Arizona, next to the Grand Canyon. We get about 1.5 million people that come to our facility every year. We have a little bit over 400 employees. That's full-time, part-time, and seasonal employees with 500 volunteers. A very large collection of over 3,000 animals, representing about 370 species. You may not know this, but we're the largest informal science-based learning organization in Arizona. And our K through 12th grade programs are all aligned with Arizona state standards. So what we want are kids to come out to the zoo, have a really great time, a fun time, but walk away with a little knowledge about science that's applicable to the classroom. So we feel that's important. We have about 40,000 household members, which equates to about nearly 200,000 individual members. It costs about $30 million a year to run the zoo. We're one of the largest private nonprofit zoos in the country. And because we're the Phoenix Zoo, everybody thinks the city of Phoenix runs us. They don't. Our board of trustees from the Arizona Center for Nature Conservation helps run the zoo. We do have a long-term lease with the city of Phoenix. A quick financial summary in terms of earned revenues. About 50% of our earned revenues come from admissions and membership. Another 15% by the special events that we house or do at the zoo. And then philanthropic contributions come in, at least last year, almost 25%. So we go out into the community and raise money for our operations. Food and retail is about 10%. And then we have educational programs. Unfortunately, the last couple of years, we have not been able to do our educational programs because of COVID, but they do raise a little money for us. On the expense side, when we talk about our donors, about 80% of the monies that we expend go to our program services. That's very important when we're out in the community raising money, because people want to see the money that we raise, the money that we earn, go to our programs. And only about 10% goes to management, and then another 10% or so goes to fundraising. You know, wild animals are experiencing tremendous pressures due to habitat destruction, poaching, pollution, and some scientists even say climate change. So what we want to do, what we want to aspire to, is we want to continue to contribute to important species survival programs that we're involved in that promote the preservation of endangered and threatened species. We also want to provide a unique destination for Arizona residents and tourists, and we want to provide outstanding educational opportunities for our visitors. our objectives for this project here in Swadita are really to breed imperiled species and to create the capacity for field-based conservation. We want to train the next generation of conservation scientists and zoo professionals. And that's why we want to partner with universities like U of A. We want to work with the Arizona Sonoran Desert Museum and Reed Park Zoo. We also want to educate our local community members about the world's pressing conservation programs and really engage them to really think about solutions to those problems. And as I mentioned previously, we want to enhance Southern Arizona's reputation as an ecotourism destination. To give you an idea about, we get about 1.5 million people. About 35% of our visitors are visitors from out of state. So we think we can be a really strong economic driver for this community. So the Swadita project that we're looking at will have several elements to it: a welcome center, a drive-through animal safari park, a water reclamation wetlands riparian reserve, which Pima County purchased part of our lease and will be building in the next few years. There'll be an imperiled animal conservation park, an imperiled animal care center, along with, we're thinking about ecotourism, possibly an RV park, some tent camping and some glamping, and some teaching space for students, as well as residential housing for students and a vet clinic. So here's a very preliminary architectural conceptual overview of the park. You can see in Section A, that area is going to be in our Imperiled Animal Conservation Park. The holding areas there are going to be quite large. Minimal holding areas are 8 acres, all the way up to 75 acres. And most of these areas will be holding critically endangered hoofstock from around the world. And the issue is we need more space. You would think the zoo with 125 acres has a lot of space. We really don't for some of these species that need a lot of space to be productive. All right, Section B is our Imperiled Animal Care Center, which is in the center, and that's really an intensive management area. We're looking at African rhinos, cheetah, Mexican wolves. That area will also have a quarantine facility, a student residential housing area, the vet clinic, and a research facility. So that's where all the nitty-gritty conservation will be happening in both of those areas. Section C will be open to the public for a drive-through safari. We plan on that safari being about a 4.5-mile drive through a wonderful area that will have a variety of species, and it'll be a great immersive experience for the public. And then, as you can see, Section D is what we're calling our ecotourism campus, with the possibility of an RV park, glamping facilities, and tent camping facilities, where you're actually right there looking off into the savannah, seeing these marvelous animals. It should be quite the sight. And then you can see Section E is the water treatment wetlands area. And we really think this is really sympathetic to what we're doing, because this part of the world, and I'm sure most of you know it, is I think the second largest migratory flyway in the United States. So there are people from all over the world that come to this part of Arizona. And it's a hot spot for birders. And we think it's really complementary and ties well with what we're trying to do in the park. And then Section F is possible future drive-through safari options as well. And this is just a context map. The property is just a little over 1,000 acres. The landowner is Freeport-McMoran. We have 2 people on our board from Freeport-McMoran. They have been very, very good to the zoo and very supportive of our zoo, and want to be supportive of this facility as well. It's located east of the Cemex Sand and Gravel Plant that I believe is just north of Pima Mine Road and Nogales Highway. And then it's also the southern part of the property is north of Walden Grove High School. We've started to have conversations, and we're really trying to build relationships with this community. Obviously, COVID has really taken us back, like it's taken all of us back, and so we're now getting back to communicating with people. We want to be an asset to this community, and we also want to be part of this community. As you can see, Freeport-McMoRan are landowners, and they will be a major contributor to this project. And then Pima County is also working with us to help build a lot of the infrastructure that will lead to the property. And then we're here talking to you, the town of Swadita. So we want to make sure that we're communicating well, that people know what we're doing. We want feedback from our community here, which I think is important. We've had initial conversations with the University of Arizona, with Arizona Sonoran Desert Museum, and with Reed Park Zoo, and we hope to be talking to the Tohono O'odham Nation soon. So we're real excited about these potential partnerships, and I thought I would throw in some pictures of some of the critters that we would consider having here. All these animals, you may not recognize some of them because they're highly endangered. If you look at the slide, you can see that there are less than 500 of these animals in the wild. The black rhino is also critically endangered. There's 5,000 of those. The Arabian oryx used to be critically endangered, but the Phoenix Zoo, along with a few others, brought them back from the brink of extinction. There were only about 13 Arabian oryx left in the late 1960s, and with the help of the Phoenix Zoo, there are now over 7,000, 1,000 in the wild and 6,000 in parks and preserves around the world. We're also thinking about cheetah, a Mexican gray wolf, scimitar horned oryx, all of which are critically endangered, and other animals like white rhinos, reticulated giraffe, Somali wild ass, and slender-horned gazelle. So a lot of these animals, and we're looking at other animals as well, and we're really excited about having the opportunity and the space to really do the conservation work we need to do to prevent these animals from going extinct. And here's our timeline. Again, COVID disrupted this project and most of our other projects, to be quite honest with you, but we're looking at completing our project plan this year with the refinement of a pro forma. We're going to finalize our parameters and determine our collection of species that we're going to be having here at the park. And then we're going to start fundraising. We've actually already have approached a few foundations, Freeport-McMoRan, as I mentioned, and so hopefully those will come through for us, and we're really excited because I think they're very excited about this project as well. We'll complete the design of the project in 2024, and then move into construction phase in around 2025-26. And if all goes well, we might be able to move even a little quicker, but that's probably the timeline we're looking at. And then phase 2 and 3 construction would come soon after. Our initial startup costs are about $12 million for this project. We estimate right now that operating the park will run us about $500,000 a year. And so, yeah, thank you very much. We really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you. If you've got any questions, I'd like to ask my colleagues to maybe come up and answer them along with me if you have any. If you don't, that's
Well,
okay too.
Well, thank you. You know, one of our greatest friends in our community is Freeport-McMoRan. They've helped us on many economic development opportunities, the Samtec building. It just goes on and on and on. So that's exciting. When I saw the acreage, it made me think of the earlier presentation about Quail Creek CFD, because it covers about the same acreage of all of Quail Creek. not only developed, but undeveloped over there. So just to give you a sense of scale, at least for folks, you know, that live around here, because I don't know how to envision 1,000 acres, but I can envision Quail Creek. So I think that's very exciting. When you've rehabilitated some of these animals, have they actually been released back into the wild when you've gotten these numbers to where they need to be?
There have been the Arabian oryx. When we've got numbers up there, we were able to move animals back to the Arabian Peninsula,
Right.
and they've been
Nice.
able to do very well there.
Right. I see Randy's here with the chamber. Wave your hand, Randy. You know, we've worked on many things with the AZ-19 corridor, I-19, call it the AC, for tourism. So I know there'll be a lot of interest. We have Canoa Ranch down, as you mentioned, migratory birds with the Madera Canyon. I could see a lot of win-wins opportunities for our corridor as a whole, as an attraction for tourism. I'm sure you are, but with all the federal money that has been coming up with ARPA and everything else, are there possibilities there? Because I know dealing with climate and resiliency and those types of things, I'm sure you're watching for those, but I know there's opportunities probably there as well.
We are. We've actually been very fruitful with federal monies over the last year or so, and so we'll be looking for philanthropy. We'll be looking for federal dollars as well as, maybe even state opportunities.
Right.
So.
Well, anytime there's those opportunities, if there's any support, I'm speaking as me as one person on the council, letters of support and those types of things, please work with our staff. I'm sure those would be opportunities that we could help on that.
Thank you,
Did you
Mr.
have
Mayor.
any questions?
Yeah, no, I think, again, just speaking as myself, on the council here, but a strong advocate for this. I think it's something, the area, the diversity we need. Growing up in Africa, I'd like to see these animals come back. So I'd be a strong supporter of this, and I think we can do to assist you. Be more than
That's
happy to help
fantastic. Where in Africa?
out. Zambia,
Zambia.
yeah.
Fantastic. I've been there. It's a beautiful country.
We'll make you the honorary chairman or something of this effort, right? Connecting someone who grew up in Africa.
As a kid growing up, a lot of those animals were still running around in the wild.
I was on the Zambezi River about 3 weeks ago. So, no. Yeah.
Well, I know collectively we've been working on, different opportunities to try to find tourism, ecotourism, but tourism, for our area because it leads to future, obviously, economic development.
Sure
So
does.
I'm personally very excited about it. When I mentioned to you earlier, I heard about this a few years ago, so I was particularly excited to hear it come back.
Well, thank you very much, Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor.
Did you have any questions?
Mayor.
Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Dilly?
Thank you, and I really appreciate the presentation. Very excited about it. This is my first intro to your project as a new town manager here. So, very excited about the prospects. Very excited about the opportunity to work with you. I echo the mayor's encouragement. Anytime I can be involved to help, support, or staff, please let me know. I did have a question on your timeline. Not all of this property is currently annexed into the town of Sahuarita. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Of it is county land.
The majority of it is, I believe, is on county property. Just, I'd have to look back and look at the exact. I can get that information for you.
My only point is there's a process for that annexation that, if it's not already included in your timeline, probably should be there so that we don't forget about those steps. And to jump on that sooner than later would be my recommendation.
Well, thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks for driving all the way down as well.
And you would be the follow-up on that, or do you have somebody we
Happy
could?
to help. Yeah.
Okay.
Just
You could get us to the right folks?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Thank you
Yep.
so much.
Thank you. Thanks
Thanks for
coming
your
and presenting.
time.
Appreciate it.
Have a nice evening.
Mayor,
Yes.
just a reminder to the council when you're talking to talk directly into the mic
Okay.
for those listening in the virtual
Yep.
realm.
I'll
Thank
keep leaning over further and further. Madam Clerk, we are at item number 13.
Discussion and possible action regarding the upcoming retirement of Town Attorney Daniel Hockley and the process for the recruitment of a new town attorney.
Thank you, and Mr. Hockley will be presenting and leading the discussion on this item tonight. Mr. Hockley?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the mayor asked me to place this item on the agenda so that we could discuss my upcoming retirement and recruitment of my successor by way of a very brief history, but I do want to say this. The first Saudi Town Council meeting was September 28th, 1994. 2 months later, I was hired as your town attorney on December 1st, 1994. I served through my law firm after that until I came in-house on January 1st, 2006. Now the more confusing part. I announced my retirement in March of 2021, as you'll recall. And you asked me to continue my employment until you had hired my successor. We advertised, did not have any qualified applicants, so I did retire. That would have been a year ago in May, but I agreed to continue as an outside independent contractor until you hired a manager. You have hired Mr. Dilly. It appears he's going to stay. and
There's always next month, but we never know.
and he appears to be doing it, an adequate job. I had to do that to him. And so now it's time for me to retire, and so I would like to do so. If you would like me to remain, again, through the recruitment process, I'll do so. But if there's not a successful recruitment this time, we'll have to talk about alternatives, because I'm kind of ready. And again, anytime you'd like me to leave, just let me know, and I'll be more than happy to retire. But if you'd like me to stay, I'm willing to stay through the process. I'd like to propose a timeline, but the timeline is up to you. The difficulty, and these are on the slide, these are the things that you may want to consider tonight and discuss, and that was also in your packet. As far as the timeline, no matter when you start to advertise it, the timeline doesn't really change because of your summer break, because there's no way you can be interviewing people before in the next month, and so then you run into your summer break. So and so the earliest you can really sort of look at the applicants would be your August meeting, August 22nd, I think. August 22nd. So my suggestion is that you, and I did put a suggested motion in the packet, but I didn't want to be presumptuous. But my suggestion is that you would move forward, direct staff to move forward. And that suggested motion, by the way, it was taken from the suggested motion for the search for Mr. Dilly. I just changed it to reflect this situation. That we post it, but I think you should post it until after the election in August. Maybe close it on August 5. The reason for that is, as you know, attorneys work for the council, and there will be some attorneys in the state who will not be happy with the outcome of their election and may be looking for other work. And so I like the idea of them having a window to apply. So if you close the position on August 5th, and I don't think you need to put any of this in the motion just says move forward at the staff level. But if we close it on August 5th, that should give us time to get the resumes to council in time for your August 22nd meeting, then perhaps interview in September and be able to make a choice then. On the slide are some issues that you may want to discuss. One of them is outsourcing to a law firm. You can do that now, or you could do that if there are no successful candidates, then you could do that then. I do know of a law firm in Phoenix that for one municipality up there, the firm is acting as town attorney while they continue the search. They don't expect to be the permanent town attorney, but they're filling in until they have somebody. Or you could outsource it entirely, like some jurisdictions do.
Can I interrupt you there, Mr. Hockley? Would I be incorrect, though, if you compare, salary as an in-house person with all the work that's going on as opposed to outsourcing, we would have to anticipate a much greater cost during that same time frame. Would that be at least possibly correct?
A few months ago, Mr. Mariotti and I ran some numbers, and assuming we could get somebody for, I can't remember what we figured, $250 an hour, I think is what we calculated, which would be difficult to get. Then for the cost, for my cost, you get 20 hours a week for that. So if you wanted 40 hours a week from someone, it's going to be twice my cost. Plus, you're going to have other people in the firm. I mean, one of the advantages of outsourcing is that you have a lot of people.
Right.
What you have now is fewer people. Right now, just one attorney. Oh, yeah, that's something else I wanted to mention. You have one attorney, and then if there's something that if I need help, I need to outsource it, then I outsource that issue to a law firm.
Right.
I wanted to also mention my deputy. You authorized a budget amendment this year for me to hire another attorney. Mr. Dilly and I talked about that, and Ms. Silva, and we thought we advertised it. It did not go well, so we decided to re-advertise that as a deputy. But with Mr. Dilly's wise counsel, I think that I should not be selecting the new town attorney's deputy. And so I think I can manage the workload until that person gets in here, and then he or she can make decisions about staffing and the needs of the department. I would be upset if I came into a position as town attorney and that had already been filled. Right. I think the rest of the things up there are self-explanatory. As you recall, we talked about hiring an executive search firm for the manager, and I actually went back and watched the council meeting when you discussed that recently. And then I know Ms. Silva has prepared a recruitment brochure, and she and I have talked about changes that need to be made to that. So my question is, would you want that to come back for approval? We did not do that for the manager. And then the timing that I talked about. And Ms. Silva is here to discuss the salary range, not the job salary range, but the hiring salary range. Yeah.
I know that was one of the conversations, whether it's job or hiring.
Right.
Because it could be, different as a person, one of the three that report to us, obviously.
Correct. The three employees, the manager, the attorney, and the magistrate, we're not in the salary range chart. We typically don't fall within that because we work for the council.
Right.
We're at will
And to be
employees.
clear, when you mentioned the time frame of the cutoff, but we would look at putting the brochure together as a possibility and then putting it on the street right now. But part of the conversation is when you put the cutoff of the timeline, and you mentioned, just a little bit after the August election, that might open up some additional opportunities for people to be looking, correct?
Correct. Yeah, that would be my thought. But again, my motion didn't anticipate that. Just like the manager,
Right.
The motion is pretty much staff move forward with this. So I would work with Ms. Silva and Mr. Dilly and on what we thought the dates would be. But unless you had a special meeting, there's no sense in closing it. I mean, that's a 2-month posting period, which is a long period of time.
Right.
But this is going to be a more difficult job to fill. Not that I'm anything great. Certainly not what I'm saying. But there's not very many municipal lawyers in Southern Arizona. They're all up in Phoenix because there's
Right.
not that many municipalities down here.
Right.
And we're asking somebody to move
Right.
down to
And
the area.
one of the discussions for us is the internal search, as we did with Mr. Dilly, as opposed to an executive, search team, which obviously I think doing it in-house, I thought went very well for us because we know what we're looking for, just my opinion. But it's kind of up to us. And before I forget, Vice Mayor, did you want to weigh in at all before we have the discussion here, just so I don't forget about you on the phone?
Sure, I'll just give a couple opinions very quickly. I think we need an in-house town attorney. I think that his expertise, he or she that we hire, the expertise in having it there available to us, having staff throughout their work day be able to reach and ask questions to our town attorney and get clarifications. That resource in-house is definitely worth it. I'm not a fan of hiring an executive search firm, and let's see, I'm okay with having the staff move forward with the brochure without having to come bring it back to the council.
Right.
And I'm in favor of the town attorney's timing of the recruitment. So I think that was pretty
think that was all of them.
Yep, other than salary range, but I'm of the mind that, we let staff using the comparatives and how we did it last time and Mr. Dilly's expertise and, setting that. I like the hiring range as opposed to the salary range myself, because we don't know who we're talking to until we're talking to them based on experience and years and all those types of things. But that's just my opinion. Councilmember Morales, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, I have a question. Is Jessica Silva
Yeah.
qualified to be an interim attorney for the town?
She's a licensed attorney, but then you wouldn't have,
HR
it's
director.
more than a full-time job. So then you would have a shortfall in the HR department.
Yes, Mr. Dilly.
That would be my concern, how to juggle that. Obviously I could work with Jessica to try to put a game plan together, but the reality is Dan is loaded with work as a single attorney in that office. You expect somebody to do that plus run an HR department. That's quite a bit to be asking anybody.
Well, I guess I'd weigh in only from the fact that I know there's a lot of things that, whether it's working on a manual for the council, there's a lot of internal facing things that I know they're working on. Can you handle both full-time jobs, Ms. Silva, in the back? Right. Well, that's a good answer, but I'm sure.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Members of the council, I think we ought to be looking for success. And if we're all looking for success, then I think we'll end up in the right spot. Not just success for filling our town attorney position, but success for Jessica as our HR director and whatever we're trying to accomplish internally. So I just would encourage the council to keep success at the back of our minds as we venture forward.
Yeah, because
Thanks.
I guess I'd be leaning towards, we pick that time frame. Let's say we work through August, and let's say we don't have a lot of folks, knowing Dan wants to retire, as opposed to double duty there. I would probably then, I know it's going to be more expensive, then I would be in favor of let's just outsource then, because we might have to try this 2 times, or, well, we're already in our second time, might be
Right.
3. So are we budgeted, Mr. Dilly, for if we had to outsource for an interim period of time?
We would figure that out.
Right.
I don't anticipate a huge problem there. One of the advantages of allowing some exposure to the outsourced option is that you get a good feel and flair for what it is. So you never know what the outcome's going to be through the recruitment process.
Right.
I mean, maybe we all cross our fingers and our toes and everything else that it's going to be a very positive and successful recruitment effort. There's there is the reality that it couldn't be. It might not be a successful recruitment effort.
Right.
Then what? Well, we've got something in place, and we can ride that horse a little bit longer and go through another recruitment effort or make decisions at that point.
Right.
Thanks.
Right.
Well, I just think that we've carried on long enough. He's already bought an RV, so he wants to go. And we just keep finding excuses not to move forward. I think we just need to move forward. And I agree with success. We need to establish success, but I think we should be ready to move on.
So you're okay, moving the internal process to, let them develop the flyer and get this thing on the street and then just keep the timeline going. And I think Mr. Dilly brought up a good point. Let's cross our fingers and our toes. And then, if we get to August 5th, we're either going to have some folks we're going to be looking at and interviewing, or we're not. And if we're not, then I think we look at other alternatives to outsource and keep the process moving, and then let Mr. Hockley be able to retire.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I could just reiterate, if you want to replace me, that's fine, but I'm willing to work to continue on until October, which is probably when someone would start.
Right.
And I think going through the process of bringing someone else in and then bringing someone else in again 4 months later, 3 months later, by the time you find somebody, I think that would really slow things down.
Right.
But
I think that's another one of those, we can cross that bridge when we get to it. So I think we go on a positive mode that will hopefully, we learned some things the first time. We learned some things with Mr. Dilly. I know this is a specific type of person, municipal attorney, with COVID and those kinds of things, but maybe things have settled. Councilman Davis?
Yeah, I guess my only point here is let's not put limitations on ourselves. We don't know if this is going to be the right fit out there. So let's just move forward. I also
Right.
agree with the vice mayor. Let's keep it internal. We don't need to go out and hire an executive company to do this. And I think get it on the street as soon as possible, and let's see what happens.
Yep.
Yeah,
And then we can
it's-
cross the other bridges
Yeah,
when
and
we
if,
get there in
if
August.
Dan rides off into the sunset, we just have the proviso to
Right.
hire an outside law company. But
Right,
let's not
to-
limit ourselves and kind of take the first person that walks in the door.
Right.
I think it's a critical position for the town, especially with, some of the development stuff we're hearing. We need
Right.
to make sure we get a good attorney.
Right.
So that's the only thing
Okay. Would you like to put that in the form of a motion that's in the packet?
certainly. I move that the town's human resource department, Mr. Hockley, go through the recruitment process for the town attorney and deliver all resumes, minimum qualifications to the town council.
Yep.
Okay.
Second. Any further discussion? Any further comments, Vice Mayor?
Can I have the motion read to me? I could not hear Simon. I just
Yep.
want to make sure before I vote.
I move that the town Human Resources Department and Mr. Hockley go through the recruitment process for the town attorney and deliver all resumes meeting the minimum qualifications to the town council.
Then yes, I'm good. I'm ready to vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Dilly, is that clear enough direction from that and from the comments that you know how to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. This next item is a continuation of our study session, which took place on May 13th. You heard a couple comments about that. Safe travels back to Phoenix. During these study sessions, the council has provided the information. We had some items that were in the parking lot, so to speak, and I appreciate Mr. Mariotti's memo addressing all those particular issues. So at this time, Madam Clerk, number 14.
Presentation, discussion, and direction regarding the town manager's recommended budget for fiscal year 2023 in the amount of $107,114,960.
Thanks, and I think Mr. Dilly and Mr. Mariotti will be tag teaming on this. Again, my appreciation for having the lengthy, and I didn't even realize I was an hour over as I was still going on.
Hour and a half.
Hour and a half. Oh, someone else was taking notes. But I thought it was very helpful to have it during the day as a single item to concentrate on it, especially since it was a new way to present it, which I appreciate as well. So please continue, Mr. Dilly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. AC and I are, in fact, tag teaming this item. We worked together in creating the answers to the various points that were left in the council parking lot. Can't remember how many points altogether.
It was probably about 7 or 8, I think.
8 points altogether. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I think what we'll do is we'd like to bring closure to those items, and that's why we have a parking lot, so that we can make sure that we're addressing those issues. And this is really important as staff works to finalize the tentative budget for your consideration at your June 13th meeting. So the first issue that was inserted into the parking lot was, how are we doing to address the delinquency accounts in the wastewater fund? In the report that you all received late last week, you'll see that a chart that was provided to you. I think I'll ask AC to just kind of run through the report itself, or the chart itself, and provide that update on the wastewater fund. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just for the record, I was the deliverer of the document, but I think it was definitely a cooperative effort with the town manager's office to produce it. But yes, so I think specifically, Mr. Mayor, you were interested in, is our sewer termination service program working? And so
Correct.
the chart that's included in the document gives you a 5-year history. And you could see for the first 4 years or so of that history, those balances just kept continuing to rise, and fairly substantially. As of January 2021, you can see that trajectory changing quite a bit and working in a positive direction. And that's commensurate with the implementation of our sewer termination program. So in our peak point in time, we had about a 1.2 million past due balance amount. And as of the latest monthly report, we're down to a little bit more than $760,000. So it's about a 40% decline since we've implemented that sewer termination program. So it is successful. There's still more work to do, and time will hopefully resolve this issue. And over time, we have people on payment plans that, as those payment plans, become fulfilled and paid off, then those balances will continue to go down.
Right, and I know on one of those, and I hope we're at least continually looking at tweaking it, because I know, we had really some high balances that we worked on, and as those get, lower, that, we don't, maybe we can tweak in a way that we don't get to shut off right away for those smaller balances. And I know each case is individual. We have investors and other landowners and those types of things. But that was just a couple thoughts to put on the table. But it's still, it's pretty, even with those 40% reduction, when you see past due notices of, $750,000. Yes, Mr. Dilly.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't mean to put AC or Beth on the spot, but I'm wondering, as we're looking at the chart and we see, a pretty obvious trend decline, which is always good for us to see regarding this particular issue. It is somewhat plateauing over the last couple of years, and I'm wondering, is there something more that we need to be doing, or are we doing everything that you guys feel we can be doing to continue to make progress the way that we want to go on these delinquent accounts?
Thank you for coming to the microphone. They yell at me when we can't be heard, including yourself.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council. To answer your question, actually, part of that plateauing you're seeing is we're also doing some general cleanup of some of those past due balances. There's, for instance, we have in our rolls of past due balances, people who we know have passed on.
Right.
Then we can't collect from them. So we're writing those balances off.
Right.
But only after we do our due diligence, make sure that they indeed have passed on, or if they've moved to another state and we have no chance to use the debt offset for the tax collection or anything like that.
Right.
Or for balances that somebody might have moved and they had a $29 balance. It's less, it's more cost effective for us to just write up that $29 than to have staff chase $29.
Right.
So we've been actually doing a lot of cleanup work, so that's also why you might see some of that plateauing, because there's that write-off that's going on as well. But you also see that plateau because we have contacted a lot of these people, and even the high dollar people, they didn't pay off in a huge, like if somebody owed $8,000, we didn't get an $8,000 check in most cases.
So it's just continuing to come in to.
Right, they went on a payment plan.
Right.
We only extend the payment plan over 2 years, so it's still a large chunk of money every month, but it's over in the next 2 years that they're going to be paying off that balance. And even some people who had smaller balances of maybe $1,200, $1,300, they still elected to use that 2-year period. Now, moving forward, we're not doing a 2-year extension anymore. We've actually shortened that because the balances are getting lower and lower and lower. So we don't want to become people's banks.
Right.
So that's one of the things that we are changing. So to your point, that people shouldn't get to that point anymore. and we're not extending it for that length of time.
And
So-
when we write it off, AC, death, whatever it might be, does that drop off the books, or will it always be carried as a liability, even though we've extended every possible means of collecting it?
Mr. Mayor, when you do a write-off, you take it off the
Okay.
books. But every year, as part of our audit process, we develop an estimate for bad debt allowance. And we typically, when we look at the balances, we know that we're going to collect anywhere between 100% of the balance or 0%. So with the auditor's blessing, we've settled on 50%. So we're sort of assuming that we're not going to collect about half of these past due balances. So if we actually collect more than half, we'll actually generate a revenue into the system. If we collect less than half, we're going to actually be writing off more than what we've written off over the years. But I did want to throw out another suggestion to answer Mr. Dilly's question. In the past, we used to take customers with past due balances to small claims court. The process is just onerous and cumbersome. Certainly wouldn't recommend that anymore, but that was the process that we utilized to put liens on individuals. The wastewater code actually allows us to place liens on property. Now, that could only be used on on accounts where the people generating or the customer generating the past due balance is also a homeowner. So I think we have an opportunity to slap lien on those properties. And since that point in time when finance did collections, we used the small claims court process as sort of our due process. But since that point in time with the sewer termination program, we developed a separate in-house due process. And I think we could use that process in-house, which is much easier than small claims court to put a lien on the property.
Well, being a transient community for a large part, I would support the lien idea, mainly from the perspective that the home's probably more likely than not at some point be sold. So
Or refinanced.
Right, or refinanced.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
At Mr. Dilly's request, I actually have researched that lien process, and I have the first draft of a policy and procedure. It's not ready to go out yet, but it'll be ready to go out fairly soon. So
Okay.
we are already moving down.
Yeah.
I'm at least already moving down that path.
But I support the idea, because if we start plateauing, I think we open our minds up again and say, okay, maybe it's a different type of person we're dealing with now, or a different type of account. So let's be open to other ways of getting that, because it still looks jarring, we're lucky, blessed to be in the black right now, but boy, if you brought another $750,000 to the table, certainly that would put us in a much better position as well.
Indeed.
Thank you. Did you have any other comments? Thank you, Beth. Sorry, that was just the first parking lot item.
It's okay, that's why we have it.
Go.
Mayor and council, the second item, if there's no further questions on the first one. Number 2 was, is it possible to get the general plan update back onto the regular election schedule for the community? Instead of the odd year, it would move to the even year. We can't change the schedule, every 10 years.
Right.
State statute says that the council, the governing board, needs to adopt a revised or updated general plan for the community. However, we do feel like you can adopt a plan and send it to the voters the very next election cycle. So we could, one thought that we've been thinking about and investigating is whether or not we could put this in front of you have you adopt it in 2025 as a council, and hold the election in November. So by the end of 2025, you adopt the general plan, and we send it to the voters in the November 2026 election. I think we're just waiting. Department of Law is looking at whether or not we can do that. And so we'll get back to you as soon as we can with that, but we're trying to honor the council's request, and I think there's a path forward on it, but we have to do our due diligence.
Well, I think, that's 25 and 26, so having that conversation in 2022, is good, because then we can figure out if we can do it or not and give us enough time, because I wouldn't want to short circuit it and not be successful, going out and passing it, because it's very, it's an interesting process, trying to communicate it and what's it mean and why it's important and all of those types
And we
of things.
absolutely, it's ripe for us to be having these conversations now, because it's a multi-year process to develop the general plan. So we need to understand what our path forward and what our end game is now. So this is a good conversation to be having.
Thanks.
The third item is direction to staff to look at all self-insured options for the organization in future years. Duly noted, we will be looking at those things, and we'll have to get back to you on that. It will likely require some consultant assistance, and so we'll be looking over the course of this next fiscal year for opportunities to advance that question and get some answers as to what we can do as a self-insured organization.
Right.
Don't know if it's viable for
Right.
us or not, but we do know that there are some obvious benefits to being able to do that. Marana is an example. They had no health insurance increase this year. And so, we can't look at another organization and say, hey, that's, the grass is greener.
Right.
Because health insurance is really based off of your history
Right.
and your demographic, and so I think we would compete very well. I think we would have very favorable outcomes if we were able to qualify for self-insured. But time will tell, and we'll have to get back to you on it. Okay.
Thanks.
Item 4, council will need to determine at some point in the near future the level of engagement by staff in developing general fund diversification options for consideration. Mayor and council, we had a bit of a robust discussion about the future and economic impacts and things that would influence us, what's coming down the pipe. Many of us are participating this week in a discussion with experts at the University of Arizona on the economy. It won't surprise me to hear them say that a downturn in the economy is going to happen. They'll argue back and forth between economists when that's going to happen, but most of them that I'm hearing, they're calling it out between 2 and 4 years. We're going to experience a downturn in the economy. The other question is how severe. And when we talk about diversifying our revenues, we're talking about doing things that would allow our revenues for the general fund principally to be able to withstand an economic downturn better. There are certain revenues that are more robust, more resilient in the face of an economic downturn than others. And so how do we diversify our revenue in the general fund to allow us to approach those economic downturns, which we know are going to come? How do we face that with a little more confidence? We stand in a good position. We've got very healthy fund balances, much to the credit of this council, to AC and leadership team, years in the making. That's all good. However, those fund balances are one-time monies, and they can disappear pretty quick. We're talking 1 year of severe economic downturn that impacts our general fund, and all of a sudden, we're done. We can't tout that 1 year surplus anymore, and so it's really important for us to be prepared, and that's what this conversation is about. There's really no takeaways on this one, Mayor and Council. Staff identified that at some point we do need to engage in this conversation at a higher level, or getting more into the details. And something that might help us in doing that, we know that we've got a funding issue in HERF. We know that the Parks and Rec Master Plan and is likely going to have a very sizable request from the community on a rec center. that could spur this kind of conversation a bit. The Economic Development Master Plan is getting redone this upcoming fiscal year. That might provide an opportunity to have more discussion on these along these lines. And then, of course, we've got the recession plan that we'll be putting together. I think those are all points over the next year time frame that will allow us to have more conversation on this topic. No decisions have to be made. There's nothing really pressing us other than good practice, good, solid, responsible management, and that's what this is. So I think it bodes well for all of us to not be having to make these types of discussions in the heat of the moment, but in advance, thinking about it long term and how can this work to the benefit of the community.
Right, and I know those situations are very individualized, because I remember going through with the pandemic, we were worried, right? And then we came out, not every town came out of it like we did. Your Tombstones and your Bisbees were very tourism reliant. And I think we were shocked or surprised to a good degree on where, so I don't want to, my opinion, I don't want to overreact as well, because I think you can cut so much to the bone, that all of a sudden it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that, in a panic, that if we start losing safe community and focusing on economic development and all those types of things, we could do it to ourselves, shoot ourselves in the foot. So, I know it's a balance. And I've seen as many articles probably that, yes, we're going into recession. Well, no, it might be a downturn, or, it may be a bump. And just like the pandemic, I think every town is going to experience something different. I just don't want to go too much in a panic mode, but that's why having a recession plan on the table, so to speak, or on the shelf, might be helpful. But
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Item 5, ways to enhance inspections and other services through virtual technology. Bottom line, Mayor and Council, is, staff is on this. I'm very proactive in terms of technology and the use of technology where it makes sense. I think we've got very capable leadership in various departments that are at play. I think specifically we're talking about inspection work during the budget retreat. I do know that there are hiccups and problems with that technology as well. Our planning director, Anna Cassidy, shared an unfortunate circumstance where there was a local permit on a pool that was actually issued by the city of Tucson. I'm like, what is that all about, right? So those types of things can happen, and I think there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from agencies that have gone before. Rest assured, though, we are in the mode of utilizing technology where it makes the most sense. And so if there's efficiencies that can be gained without sacrificing quality, I think we're going to be all about that, and you'll see that as staff. One of the steps in this direction, I know that the Planning and Building Department is going to exercise a survey of sorts to our heavy and frequent customers and ask them to what extent this virtual technology is desirable and how can it help in the process. And so we'll go through that exercise. We'll reach out to our customers. We'll hear from them on what works and what wouldn't work. We'll assess all that information, and we'll get back to you if we see an opportunity that we can advance.
thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay. The next item, number 6, council expressed concerns about the proposed increases in fiscal year 23, particularly regarding the police department. Mayor and council, I would note that the total department budget increase that you saw, each department presented to council, and at the opening slide for each department, you saw a net or total delta, so an increase or a decrease. And many of the departments had double-digit increases. The note that I want to make here is, in particularly pertaining to the police department's increase of $1.91 million that was being proposed, you have to remember that that is a budget year to budget year comparison. Factored into that were a number of changes that the council approved mid-year this fiscal year. And so because those weren't part of the original fiscal year 22 budget, those changes are wrapped into next year's budget. And so you're seeing the magnitude of changes mid-year this year, plus whatever your staff is bringing forward to you as needed for next fiscal year. And so I provided a breakdown, particularly of the police department, to illustrate the difference. So if you look at the police department in particular, we've got $1.72 million, or 90% of the total change, that $1.91 million. 90% of that change is wrapped up in personnel costs. Okay, so it's not like we can cancel a bunch of contracts and make a significant difference in what you're seeing by way of requested increases for these departments. And this is focused on the police department, but I could say literally almost for certainty similar things for each of the departments, because our expenses are so heavy on the staff side and not necessarily on other things. So 90% of the total increase is personnel. Of the total delta between the two fiscal years, the remaining 10% is really costs to maintain current level of services and to honor our obligations under contracts. That's what that 10% is.
Right.
Of the total budget change, that 90%, approximately 48% of that it comprises of changes that you already approved as a council mid-year this year. 48% of that $1.72 million. The remaining 42% is stuff that the town manager is recommending in the budget for fiscal year 23. I also want to note that on a per employee capita or ratio before and after the pandemic, let's see, I just want to make sure I have my notes here. I think that we bode very well. If you look at the very bottom chart on the second page, staffing history, that image is cut off in terms of dates, but we haven't completely recovered from where we were at the recession in 2010. Additionally, as we compare ourselves to other jurisdictions in the region, even with the proposed increases, we still stand incredibly lean in terms of the work that we're providing and the services we're providing to the public, and the number of employees that we're doing it with in comparison to like Marana and Oro Valley and Tucson.
Right.
So I think to address the concern, are we keeping in mind that we have a potential recession coming ahead of us, and we don't want to be in the mode of laying people off? None of us do. I shared my experience with the council during the retreat. I certainly have that burned into my memory banks, and will be very cognitive as we move forward in how we're advancing staff. But growth is our bread and butter as a community, and if we're not feeding that engine and making sure that we're efficient and moving that forward, we're going to sacrifice in other ways. And so, as long as we continue to stay very lean in comparison to the number of employees we have per capita, and in comparison to what other agencies are doing around us, I think we have a very positive story to tell.
No, I would agree, and I would support personally leaving it as is. One, because I know the department heads got together and kind of were challenged on looking at the full picture, and they came out saying this is where our needs are. And to your point, I understand about being lean, and I want to be lean as well, but I don't want to take that to a point of failure, because growth is important, and if we're not doing it correctly, again, that can be, I think, shooting yourself in the foot, type of a scenario that I worry about. Any other comments on that as well? Vice Mayor, any comments on that particular one?
I support what you had said, Mayor. I think we need to be very careful about getting behind in a situation. It's very hard to catch up.
Right. Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you, Mayor. Additionally, we provided just slides that were already shown to the council during the retreat, but the status of our fund balances and how prepared we are, not just in our lean operations, but in our fund balance practice and protocol. I think we're in a very good position to face a economic downturn should it occur.
Right. Thank you.
Number 7, so this is second to the last item. A suggestion was made to staff that we increase the reserves by 10%. That would therefore make it, instead of 5 million rainy day, it would be 5.5 million in lieu of the fact that we see that in the next couple of years we're expecting a recession. In working with finance, we've already taken steps to make this change, and it'll be reflective in your tentative budget when you see it on June 13th. Unless you have any questions on that. I also, in the same breath as this question came up, there was a comment or two about, again, the double-digit increase in some of the departments, specific focus being played on the police department. I'm hoping that the information I shared in the previous response somewhat addressed that concern, but 90% of that increase is staff-driven, whether it's compensation or new employees. And it's in regards to the police department, not quite sure where council would recommend cutting. If you're asking staff to go back and look at recommendations to cut in terms of the staffing, I'll take that direction from you tonight, but that's not being recommended by the town manager.
Right. Yeah. No, I wouldn't make that recommendation. And I think the health of our finances shows the ability to say, okay, let's increase that by 10%, and we can. So I think that just goes to the bottom line, the point that, because we're that healthy, we can react to those things, and no matter what comes up, we can have those future discussions. But I wouldn't be in favor of any particular cut.
Mayor and council, the fact of the matter is that we've got employees that are very much in the trenches in terms of the growth side of things, producing permits and reviewing plans and handling the submittals and working with developers. But once that home is built and people occupy that home, we have a population here that, regardless of a recession or not, are going to demand services. And so as our population continues to grow, we need to make sure that we are staffed adequately to provide those services, unless the council wants to have a level of service discussion and start questioning the level of service that we're providing, not necessarily the service itself. And happy to engage council along those lines as well. But as I haven't heard that from council desire to change level of service.
Well, I have all the time. It's always to go higher, but that takes people to do that.
It does. Assuming that we're comfortable with the level of service that we're at today, your staff is recommending what it is in terms of maintaining that service level as our population continues to grow.
Right. And with the other comfort level, I like the slide that AC produced, that I know it doesn't account for more employees, but as we move out 5 years, our delta grows, and that gives us the ability. So if I have a comfort level, well, I know it's going to grow because we know about our platted lots and the platting process and all of the above, at least for the next few years, and we can always adjust carefully, right, to where if we're down, if we're not meeting that goal, well, then we don't grow as fast. But if we do, and you want to keep the same level of service, then you have to grow to that point. So I found that graph really helpful, that delta of reserves, carryover funding is just going to continue to grow. But you were clear that that's because we're not adding anything, to that. But I think that that's padding. so to speak, that we can be careful with. Mr.
Yeah,
Davis? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I got one just on this item 7, and what I'd like to see, and I know you're going to be working on a recession plan, is just as opposed to arbitrarily, let's add another $500,000 to the reserve plan, is to actually come up with a plan, because not only it's adding money, it's when the money comes out of it, and that, I think, at what point indicates we draw down the reserve funds,
Right.
or in bumpy years or another COVID outbreak that we seem to make lots of money at, we have an actual guided plan, because it just seems to me it's kind of, to use the word, it's a little hokey saying, we got lots of money, let's just put some more money in there. Let's come up with a plan that lays it out for future councils on what we use this money for and when we can tap into it.
Sounds good, and that's exactly what you're going to get in the recession plan, Councilman Davis. I'm confident with it, so looking forward to having those discussions with council.
Thank you.
Mayor and council, the final item on your parking lot was that the mayor, you had asked specifically if there was a way for us to differentiate online retail TPT versus regular TPT. And I think I'll turn this one over to AC to walk us through the response. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, as I indicated at the budget retreat, there's a way to piecemeal out some of the information, but not all of the information. So the state and the municipalities have always been collecting TPT, transaction privilege taxes, on sales transactions for any marketplace facilitator that had a physical location within the state. So that would be the Amazons and, the Walmarts and the, Walmart.com, I should say. So we've already been collecting for those. So there's no easy way to parse out that information from the regular TPT transactions.
Right.
However, when the state law changed just a few years back to put our tax code in a format that would allow us to tax out-of-state remote sellers,
Right.
or third-party sellers through in-state marketplace facilitators, they created a tax code that now we can differentiate that activity. So, but I think your interest was more in understanding sort of the change that we're seeing there relative to the change over time that we're seeing in our regular retail transactions.
Right. It was more of a curiosity. Just where's the trends going, from an economic development standpoint. So it was more of that, curiosity, just to track it or understand better. Just like I'm sure every brick and mortar store is trying to figure out, the same thing, right? What's their competition or where's there's opportunities?
So what I've done in the monthly TPT report, which I've already sent to you, and I've also included an excerpt of that report in this handout, is I have broken out those third-party and remote seller transactions that utilize the new state tax code. So I've given that information in this handout here, which you can see in the current fiscal year, we've collected about $674,000 for those types of transactions. Last year, through the same period year to date, $584,000, which is a 15.3% increase year over year. Relative to the other retail trade, which would still include in-state marketplace facilitators, we have a 7.8% change. So I do think that we're seeing more growth in the online activity versus the brick and mortar.
Right. And that was more the basis of my question, just as we're tracking it over time, what are we seeing as trends? And especially with the League of Cities and Towns, when they're talking about legislative changes and things like that, that just gives me, some ammunition, information that can be helpful whether we're advocating for those types of changes. Thank you.
We will include this information in every future monthly TPT report so we can track those changes moving forward as well.
Thanks.
Mayor and council, that walked you guys through the few items that you had on your bucket list or your parking lot. I'd happy to take any questions that you might have. Otherwise, I think this sets staff up pretty well to complete and finalize the tentative budget for your consideration on June 13th.
Yep. Thank you. Vice Mayor, did you have any more comments or questions before we go to?
No. No, thank you so much for bringing those issues back to us. I appreciate getting the answers that we had questions to.
Thanks. Do you have any questions or
Yeah,
comments?
just one question. Obviously, this presentation tonight on the Phoenix Zoo project, they got some pretty aggressive timelines there. I don't know if that's something to look at from a budgeting standpoint, economic development, over the next 12 months, if that's something that needs to be addressed, or certainly something set aside for a contingency or something. I'm not sure.
It might help flatten the curve on a recession. you
Right.
know, if
Well,
you,
that's-
if
yeah.
you think
You're
about
talking
it.
about a diversified stream, right?
Yeah,
That would
yeah,
could be
that's
a
right.
I just-
diversified stream.
As a economic driver, certainly, but I
Yeah.
think that's something, do we need to look at that for next year's budget? Just an idea.
Thank you.
On that point, when you were bringing up annexation and such, is it their desire to have it all in the town, or have we gotten to that point yet?
It's our desire to have.
I know
them
it's
all
our
in the-
desire. I was just curious if, we've had those discussions, with them.
Mayor, I'd have to defer to staff if it looks like we haven't engaged, so maybe it was just perfect that we
It was.
introduced that tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And-
It seemed like they were interested to have those conversations. There is a timeline associated with annexation, and so I wanted to make sure that was on the forefront of their thoughts as they're looking at their own timeline, because a lot of that work could be happening as a precursor to their start of construction in phase 1 in 2025. So over the next couple of years, we get the rest of it annexed, and then we're set to go. So
Well, and to Councilman Davis's point, if it's in our town, we have much more potential ability to help or bring infrastructure to it or whatever. I don't know
That's
what
right.
their needs are,
That's
but
right.
obviously if it's in our town, that's much easier to do than help on an entity that we wouldn't necessarily see revenue streams from or whatever it might be.
And I think that serves the purpose. I mean, my assumption, and I don't feel like I'm too far off in the assumption, they're here tonight presenting to the town council
Right.
because they want to be associated with a municipality, a jurisdiction, and not just the county. And
Right.
so I think that plays into their mission and interest as well, and serves their purpose to go ahead and move forward with annexation.
Right, yeah. So I certainly, anything to do, to help support that, I would say, please let us know.
Yeah, just a point on that, the building
yes.
department's going to have to learn on rhinoceroses and
Yeah, absolutely.
building setbacks. It's going to be interesting.
My question is, what is it going to be called? In my mind, is it going to keep the Phoenix Zoo name, or is it?
Well, I would guess not.
So it'd be interesting. I think they're right though. That kind of amenity sure attracts a lot of people. What a great thing to be able to tout.
Well, I know
our
as the
community.
town continued to grow, Desert Diamond rebranded their name. I can't remember now, Randy, what it was before, but it's the Sahuarita, Desert Diamond Sahuarita. On there. Are you pointing to Jessica because she funds that individually? Or? Oh, okay. So when we engage with them, let's bring those good ideas up as well. What type of, because there isn't a resolution or anything, what type of motion do you need, not at all, just?
Not at all. As long as we've fielded
Everybody's
your questions and you're satisfied
satisfied.
with the responses, I think the ball is still in the staff's court. We'll finalize that tentative budget and get it ready for you on June 13th.
Any other comments or changes you're concerned about? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great presentation, as always. Next, we are at item number 15. Madam Clerk.
Executive session pursuant to ARS Section 38-431-03A3 for discussion and consultation for legal advice with the town attorney, and pursuant to ARS Section 38-431-03A4 for discussion and consultation with the town attorney in order to consider the town's position and instruct the town attorney regarding the town's position regarding contracts that are the subject of negotiations in pending or contemplated litigation or in settlement discussions conducted in order to avoid or resolve litigation relating to 1, a proposed development agreement with Ropes and Ranch Quail Creek LLC for development of Quail Creek Specific Plan 2, and 2, the notice of claim filed by the Casas de Abrego Homeowners Association and various homeowners.
Thank you. This will require a motion to commence with the executive session. I'll entertain a motion at this time. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. And we'll probably take like a 5-minute break. We'll meet upstairs. Staff knows who needs to be there, correct,
Yes.
Mr. Dilly? And then for the remaining few, usually we have no comment other than we directed staff, so feel free to not have to stay until we come back down.
I'm just sad we missed EG's.
I know, I saw the Boy Scouts out.
Everybody, yeah, I'm
Everybody
sure
was
there's nothing
enjoying it,
left.
Which is the appropriate amount of demographic to enjoy it. Back in regular session, having given instruction and receiving feedback from our town attorney and staff, having no more further business for the public, we're adjourned. That's the happiest person here. Waiting for those people upstairs. They won't stop talking.